Atlanta's Arms Company, founded by Hathaway Clive, has made a meteoric rise from a mid-level arms dealer to a megacorp the likes of which we've never seen. Even before the Fourth Corpo War, Arasaka and Miltech couldn't have matched this monster, and in the time of the Red, Mac could buy and sell them like a Cromer slings, cheap dwarfs, and rot gut booze. But that's not even the strangest thing about this new megacorp. They're hitting the scene, and what strikes you is that every street punk, poser, and tight-laced corpo is slinging eddies left and right to buy in. How did this happen? All the Eurodollar in the world couldn't buy Max stock at this point. And nobody seems to know. They can't sell that many. They can't sell that many mods. But that's where this Maytag guy comes in. Sure, he's a stuffed corpo suit, but his easy life at the top of Biotechnic came to an end when Mac came and bought them out lock, stock, and barrel. And he wants you to look into this Clive fella and find out how he climbed so far to the top that he bought a megacorp with the money that was stuck in his couch cushions. Sound like fun? We'll find out on Driving and Dragons how we use history to build something interesting in our cyberpunk or other tabletop game. So, my terrible line reading aside, does that sound like a game you'd like to be part of? A mysterious new mega corporation comes out of nowhere and eclipses all other megacorps in a time after the net has collapsed and Night City has been hit with nukes. What is this strange Manus Arms Company and their basically unknown founder who's come forward and created this monstrous corporation that not only does it completely eclipse Arasaka and Militech, the two largest megacorps, the ones that just fought a war that ended in a nuke being dropped on the city and the sky being turned red, and the collapse of the net as the cyberpunk world knows it. They're not only that much bigger, but they're the most public megacorp ever. Everybody's buying in. You got street punks that are foregoing buying their brain dances just so that they can buy stock in this company because it's turning over so much. You got people selling everything they have to buy in to try and get a better life through this strange new mega corporation, and it's an arms dealer, and there's only so many weapons you can sell. Now all of a sudden you got this guy coming up, this Maytag dude who used to be part of Biotechnic before they were bought out, and he's telling you that there's more than meets the eye and you need to look into it. That sounds like the kind of intrigue and corporate espionage you'd like to look at in a cyberpunk game, doesn't it? It does to me. So what does this have to do with using history in your tabletop role-playing games? Well, let's take a look at some of the facts that I put together for this little cyberpunk scenario. You got this company, the Manus Arms Company, and you have their founder. They're a mid-sized arms dealer that's functioning in the world after the Red. And as my players go into this, what are they going to find out? They're going to start off finding out that, it wasn't arms that made him big. It was a thing called the New Net. Now, in Cyberpunk Red, the general demeanor is that the net has been more or less collapsed. It's no longer worldwide like the internet as we know it. It's now something that has to be, entered from different access points, mainly because of a massive war between two giant megacorporations, Arasaka and Militech Securities, which were both bigger than everybody else. And this new net is allegedly something that bridges the gap and allows you to go from point to point, reestablishing kind of the old internet. And they, through some government wrangling, have the only access to this new net. It is super heavily defended. And what they've done is they have taken on the debt, the contractor debt from Night City that was taken out to rebuild the city after the Fourth Corbo Wars. And they have turned around and they have monetized that, backing it with exclusive access to this new net. And then they've turned around and they've sold that back out to people in the form of company stock. You buy in the stock, you get part of the debt payments that the city has to pay into the corporation. And this is their stock scheme. Their stock scheme is they basically converted the debt payments from Night City to the contractors that have rebuilt Night City after the Fourth Corbo War, and they've converted that into something that they're selling back out as stock. And you're really buying into the dividends and the way you can traffic information through the new net, and that's really how they're doing. They're getting these. They started by taking the debt from the people who had it and trading it for company stock. This is what my players find out after this Maytag guy comes in. And who is this Maytag guy? He was a Biotechnica vice president who lost his job and went into Night City politics after the Manus Arms Corporation bought out Biotechnica. And it really, really put a cramp on his lifestyle and hurt his own personal finances. But he also happens to be the driving force behind MAC getting this lucrative deal, this deal where they were able to turn everything from what was basically worthless debt to the city that was never going to get paid back into a massive lucrative stock deal that is so crazy that everybody's starting to buy into it. As they look into it, they'll even find out that the city will subsidize your ability to buy into this stock. If you can bring in 20% of the eddies, they'll pay the other 80% of the stock, which essentially give you a car loan on your stock, which can then be bought and sold however you want to, just like anything else can. They're allowing people to finance into buying into this stock, which they'll then keep, turn around and sell to create even more profit, driving the price up even more. Now you've got this mega corporation that stands above all others and rose so fast that even these super powerful corporations couldn't stop it from happening. Now this guy's wanting you to look into how it all happened, where it all came from, what this new net is, and what they're doing now. And you're digging into this guy, this Hathaway Clive, who started this entire situation. Lots of intrigue. There's tons of detail back here. And if you wanted to come in and ask me details about how things work, I can snap them off. I can snap it off how it works. I can tell you the details of this intricate stock plan. Why? Because what I've basically done is taken the English history of the South Sea Company, the South Sea Trading Company, and converted it into cyberpunk. For those who don't know, there's a ton of videos out there on it. As a matter of fact, Extra History has a great series on it. The South Sea, basically what happened with the South Sea Trading Company is this guy came in, he had a company called the Hollow Sword Blade Company. It was a sword company, and he wanted to buy a bunch of land in Ireland, and to get it, he basically took the money on loan from the government by agreeing to purchase government debt, and then he would turn around, he would take on this government debt, it was usually his military debt, and he would buy that, basically he would use the debt to buy the land from the government. And he got the debt by going to the people who had that debt, and he turned around and he basically sold shares in his company for that debt and used it with the promise of dividends. But the only way it worked is he went to a government official and got the exclusive trading rights to the South Seas for his company. The other British people looked and they saw what British East India had done, which was a massive government-sponsored corporation, and they saw how that was happening, and they looked at it and they said, okay, we'll trade away our government debt to get these dividends back, thinking that the stock is going to be worth a lot because of the trading. Well, at the end of the day, the South Sea trading couldn't have possibly supported it because they only had access to like one or two ports. They couldn't do 1/100th of the business that the British East India Company could have done. And the whole thing goes through. It basically turned into a giant pyramid scheme where they were buying and selling stock. They were financing stock. They would let you pay 10% down and basically make payments on the rest of your stock, which you would never keep. You would just turn around and sell it so that you could get your money back out of it, which would further drive up the stock. And it eventually got to the point where they were paying what would be the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars in bribes just to pass laws to prevent other companies from being on the stock market because there was not enough money to keep the engine rolling on their stock scam. If other companies were allowed to be traded on the market, and it blew up and it all came crashing down. And of course, there was this guy Walpole who had actually been put in prison before, essentially for trying to stop the early part of the South Sea Company. And when he got out of prison and was back in the offices, he bought into it and made himself an absolute fortune off of it. And when the whole thing started to come apart, he came out as the champion against all the people who were ripped off by this, and just in brilliant political plays made it happen. He came out looking like a rose because he gets thrown in prison for opposing it, comes out, gains some power, uses that power to capitalize on this, and becomes basically a partner in it to make it even worse, pouring gasoline on it, collecting paychecks and bribes the whole way. And then when it starts to unwind, he gets to step out and be the people's champion that shuts this whole thing down. Great piece of financial history, and almost guaranteed to be something most of your players have never seen, because unless they've studied a lot of finance or just have a love for economic history or happen to stumble across a video series on it, they're not really going to understand it, and they're certainly not going to recognize it when it's a new megacorp that has risen up in Night City in your Cyberpunk game. So, what has it done for me? I put that entire thing together this afternoon in the space of an hour. That's all it took. It took an hour plus the time to refresh my memory on some videos about the South Sea Bubble, because I was like, hey, that's a good one to work with. Let me refresh my memory a little bit, plug it into Cyberpunk, and see what it works out. But that could easily be the seed that turns into an entire published campaign for a Cyberpunk game. And it fits. It is rife with the kind of corruption and greed and political machinations that make cyberpunk and make you want to play it. It gives you all the corporate espionage you could ever want. It gives you it gives you an entire net system for your net runners to play in, trying to break through and uncover what is this new net, which is my stand-in for all that worthless Irish land that meant nothing that he was buying in. He was basically buying it to turn around and flip it because he was getting cheap from the government. And the only way it worked is because he did it with government debt in the first place. And it's also my stand-in for the South Seas trading. There was no value in the South Sea trading. They could not, their trading rights were so limited, there was no way it could produce enough money to deliver on all these dividends and promises. And that's what my new net is. My new net is, there's nothing behind it. It's really just a great cyber wall, a great black ice program to keep the players out from figuring out that really there's nothing in the new net. It has barely any limited function. It's a whisper and a prayer, all done to cover up what is essentially a giant Ponzi scheme being run by the Mac Corporation and the person who hired the players, who is then going to turn around and use it to restore power to the government so the government can play against these other megacorps, because he has managed to create a situation where Night City can pull in that much more power and can become a major player even above and beyond large governments and can actually play with the megacorps that have taken over everything. So that's what I've got there, and it's all from a single piece of history about British finances and basically a giant corporate stocks game. You can do the same things in your game. Take something, alter it just a little bit, and I've basically built an entire campaign seed in the span of about an hour, and anything I need to come up with for adventure ideas, anything I need to come up to adjust a mission, to answer a question, can all be found by simply thinking, what did this person do in real life? How did this happen with the South Sea Trading Company? And where would it plug in? How would it fit into my cyberpunk setting? And bingo, 1700s Britain becomes 2030 Night City. That's how you use a piece of history as a game master to put something together for your players. It's really that easy. It's all about finding something that is not going to be expected to, boom, make something good. I'll see you next time when we talk about building some players. Like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you think. Is that a game you'd play? Or how about this? How would you put it into a medieval fantasy setting? Or how would you put it into a superhero game? Let me know. I'll talk to you soon.